2026 is shaping up to be a wild, multi-genre showcase for what Unreal Engine 5 can really do. And in this video, we're checking out 25 of the biggest new games coming this year that you should keep an eye on. What's up, guys? It's Broz, and here we go. Hell Let Loose is going back to war, but this time it is Vietnam, and it is being built on Unreal Engine 5 from the ground up. Team 17 is pitching this game as a standalone entry set for 2026, with the same big team identity the series is known for, just moved into a completely different kind of combat space. Jungle sightlines, tighter engagement ranges, and a setting where cover is never as clean as a European stone wall changes how the whole game reads on screen. The devs have moved beyond the limitations of the previous iteration to create an environment where foliage isn't just a visual layer, but a tactical necessity. What matters most is the tech shift. Team 17 openly frames Vietnam as the point where the franchise moves forward with a new engine and a new content pipeline, instead of stretching the older build forever. That usually means better lighting, heavier atmosphere, and more room for destruction and foliage density, without the game falling apart under 50v50 chaos. For players, Vietnam is also a reset of expectations. This is not marketed like a small map pack. It is positioned like the next major step for the series, with a new theater, a new visual baseline, and a fresh platform generation focus. MUDANG 2 Hearts is coming out of Korea with a very specific vibe. Glossy, cinematic, and built like a modern stealth action thriller, rather than a pure shooter. EVR Studio revealed it at Xbox Games Showcase with a 2026 window, and the developer announcement lists PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. The pitch follows two leads caught in the same crisis, and the footage leans hard into that cutscene to gameplay flow where everything feels directed. The setting is near-future Seoul with massed attacks, tight interiors, and sudden bursts of violence that look staged like a TV thriller. EVR has also been unusually open with raw material. Longer gameplay demos, AI scenario clips, and dev diary breakdowns that show how the systems are built. One of the key tech pillars is motion matching, aimed at keeping combat and movement transitions smooth and believable, while the capture pipeline pushes facial work and body language like a bigger AAA production. Spatial audio is treated as a tactical layer too. Sound carries through spaces, and enemies react to suspicious noise, including nearby footsteps. This project calls out a simple point. UE5 does not have to feel heavy when the engineering is sharp. Phantom Blade Zero is S-Game's action RPG with a very deliberate identity. Kung Fu punk vibes, slick lighting, and fights that read like choreographed wuxia. Fast, aggressive, and built around clean timing, rather than slow, stamina-first Souls pacing. The studio keeps describing it as a Kung Fu action game first, with Souls elements treated like seasoning, not the whole recipe. You play as Soul, an elite assassin who gets framed and effectively put on a clock. He has 66 days to clear his name. Countdown also matches the way S-Game talks about Scope, a focused single-player campaign with multiple endings, and interviews putting the main story around 20 to 30 hours. If you are not digging into side content, hands-on coverage from show floor demos, including Tokyo Game Show, keeps circling the same point. It is tough in a satisfying way, and the combat feels responsive enough that improvement comes from learning rhythms and spacing. CEO and game director Liang also openly talks about cutting anything that is not essential and polishing what stays in, including exploration that still hides secrets and side paths, but avoids the get lost for 2 hours maze design. Release is now set for September 9, 2026, with PS5 and PC confirmed so far. Valor Mortis takes the Souls-like formula into first person and drops it into a warped Napoleonic era. One more level, the Ghostrunner studio announced it with a 2026 window and even ran Steam playtest signups early. You play as a soldier of Napoleon's army who gets pulled back from the grave into a Europe rotting under a mysterious plague. Out there, the battlefields are crawling with the plague-ridden abominations of Napoleon's Eternal Guard, and the whole setup leans into alternate history war, turning into a full nightmare. First-person melee lives and dies by readability, so the identity here is close-range impact. Parries, dashes, visceral finishers, and that heavy commitment on swings that looks closer to methodical dueling than to a fast FPS. Combat also is not locked into one lane. Steel weapons and pistols sit next to supernatural powers that can alter fights and open new options. Playtest feedback had a loud downside too: optimization. Stutters and big drops came up a lot in heavier moments, and mid-range setups were not spared. I also played the playtest and can back it up. On an RTX 4060, I had to turn on DLSS and stick to medium settings for it to feel properly playable. But if you set that aside, the game itself felt genuinely interesting, mostly because of that plague-soaked vibe and the whole war turned into horror angle. The Blood of Dawnwalker is Rebel Wolves coming out loud right away. The game is led by Konrad Tomaszkiewicz, one of the key names behind The Witcher 3. The setting is 14th century Europe at the peak of the Black Death, and the story starts with your family being taken, while vampires use the chaos to step out of the shadows and take power. You play as Cohen, a Dawnwalker stuck between two states, human by day, vampire by night, and the design leans into that split as a real gameplay loop. Daytime gameplay focuses on grounded combat and human tools, while the night side pushes mobility and predatory power, including wall-running style traversal and the shadow step move shown in official footage. The big mechanical twist is time. The core objective lives inside 30 in-game days and nights, and major actions can move the clock forward, forcing hard choices about what gets done before the deadline hits. Rebel Wolves also confirm there is no classic main questline structure. You know where the end goal is, and you can go for it early. But the game is built around the consequences of how you spend time, who you help, and what you sacrifice on the way. The game is officially announced for 2026 on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Star Wars Galactic Racer is finally giving the franchise a fresh racing lane, and the official pitch is surprisingly specific. Secret Mode says it is launching in 2026 on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, developed by Fuse Games in collaboration with Lucasfilm Games. It is framed as a runs-based, high-stakes racer born in the Outer Rim, with an underground league vibe and a revenge-driven story hook built around reputation and survival. Fuse Games is staffed with veterans from Burnout and Need for Speed, so the project comes in with real racing DNA behind it, not just a Star Wars coat of paint. The structure is built around variety, different classes of repulsor vehicles with distinct handling, from nimble skims to heavier land speeders, and you make meaningful upgrade decisions during the run. Instead of a fixed championship ladder, the game is pushing a loop where each attempt can play out differently depending on what upgrades you take, what risks you accept, and how you manage the pressure. So the vibe is less classic pod racing nostalgia and more a modern, high-stakes racer that uses Star Wars as a setting for a new format. Lords of the Fallen 2 is being built as the next big UE5 swing from CI Games and Hexworks, and it already has a clear 2026 target inside the publisher's own roadmap, with Epic's investment locked in specifically for PC exclusivity. The setup leans hard into the series' signature split reality hook, one world with two overlapping realms, where the umbral lamp stays central and the tone is pure dark fantasy misery, with official store wording framing it as a kingdom being eaten away by umbral darkness over a long stretch of time. In terms of content beats, the reveal cycle in late 2025 pushed the brutal executions angle even harder, with coverage calling out a dedicated dismemberment system as a headline feature rather than a one-off gore toggle. CI Games publicly reported that the 2023 reboot had passed 2 million units sold by August 2025, so the sequel is not a vibes-only announcement, it is a follow-up to a game that proved it can move real volume. On the tech and production side, CI Games has also tied this project to a player-first pipeline with heavier external testing, and a stated focus on reducing friction points like onboarding and controls. You'll be able to play the second part on PS5 and Xbox Series, and on PC only via the Epic Games Store. Saros is Housemarque taking that Returnal-grade speed and turning it into a more cinematic sci-fi action game set on Carcosa, a colony world stuck under a brutal eclipse. Combat still reads like bullet ballet, but the official breakdown focuses on defense and momentum. There is a parry-style tool built for absorbing incoming fire and reflecting it back, so fights stay aggressive even when the screen is filled with projectile patterns. The biggest structural change is progression. Returnal could wipe a run clean, Saros keeps the loop, but every death feeds permanent upgrades, letting you improve your suit, abilities, and gear, so the game literally pushes the comeback stronger idea as a core system. They also highlighted a second chance revive tied to Eclipse corruption energy once it is unlocked, and they have already named an Eclipse escalation system that ramps the experience as you push deeper. Saros was originally dated for March 20th, 2026, then moved to April 30th, and it is confirmed for PS5 with PS5 Pro enhancements. Cthulhu: The Cosmic Abyss goes for Lovecraft in a near-future frame instead of vintage cosplay. The game is set in 2053, with a global resource crunch pushing corporations deeper into the ocean, right up to the point where deep-sea mining turns into something much worse. You play as Agent Noah, a secret Interpol unit focused on occult cases, sent to investigate the disappearance of miners at the bottom of the Pacific. He is not alone. The game pairs him with an AI companion called Key, and Key is not just flavor. It is built into the investigation loop with tools like sonar that can highlight clues and details that are easy to miss with the naked eye. The structure leans into exploration and puzzle solving with choices that branch the story, while the sanity angle is treated as a real pressure point as Cthulhu's influence blurs the line between reality and hallucination. The release date is locked for April 16, 2026, and it is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Solasta II moves the series forward by changing the whole backdrop. The story jumps decades after the first game and throws you onto a new continent, where your party is a set of 4 siblings, and the campaign is built around their internal tension as much as the external threat. Tactical Adventures keeps the rules-first identity and sticks to modern Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rules, so fights still live and die by positioning, line of sight, and smart use of reactions. Only now encounters make heavier use of verticality and interactive environments than the original ever did. One of the loudest early highlights is the main antagonist, Shadwin. The studio revealed she is voiced by Amelia Tyler, and that single casting choice instantly tells you the tone they are chasing, confident villain energy with real presence. Presentation also takes a big step up, with larger scenes, more cinematic lighting, and cleaner character work, while the interface and controls are being shaped around comfort on a gamepad, so it does not feel like a keyboard-only tactics game wearing a controller icon. Early access starts March 12, 2026 on PC, which makes this sequel the kind of project that grows in public, with systems and balance evolving alongside the community. High on Life 2 lands on February 13, 2026, and it is set up as a Day 1 Game Pass release, which fits the way the first game exploded in reach once it hit subscriptions. Squanch keeps the talking gun identity, the rude sci-fi comedy, and the weird weapons-first approach, but the sequel's big gameplay hook is movement. Skateboarding is baked into traversal and combat, turning fights into fast lines where you shoot, slash, and chain tricks through alien spaces instead of jogging between arenas. The voice cast is a big part of the pitch again, with recognizable talent and strong character performances, so every gun and NPC has a real personality instead of sounding like generic background noise. There is also a behind-the-scenes anecdote that already became a meme in coverage. The team talked about wanting Danny DeVito for a gun role, and the story ended with a flat no, which is exactly the kind of chaotic energy this series attracts even outside the game itself. The sequel's public showing emphasizes cleaner animation and bigger set pieces, with the humor staying filthy and the pacing looking more confident instead of first big swing roughness. Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra is Amy Hennig stepping back into big cinematic action, only this time the stage is World War II, and the center is an uneasy alliance between Steve Rogers and Azuri, the Black Panther of the 1940s. The story sits in occupied Paris with Hydra pressure building in the background, and the game is designed around an ensemble rather than a single superhero. Marvel has confirmed 4 playable characters, adding Nanali, a Wakandan spy embedded in Paris, and Gabriel Jones from the Howling Commandos. Casting is one of the few concrete details they've actually locked in while gameplay is still being kept under wraps. And with the main roles already confirmed, it's clear the story is aiming for a more grounded, character-driven tone where tension and friction inside the team matter as much as the bigger war around them. The schedule, however, got messier. Skydance pushed the game beyond its early 2026 plan to give the team more time for refinement. So 2026 remains the public target without a locked day. Ace Combat 8: Wings of Theve is being built as a technical and cinematic reset for the series, and the devs are unusually open about what that means in practice. Project Aces is shipping a massive 1-to-1 scale battlefield. Coverage talks about a 10,000 square kilometer map, and they are putting real effort into weather as gameplay because the new in-house cloud tech Cloudly is designed to change visibility, altitude reading, and target tracking as you fly. The structure still lives in strange real, with radio chatter and that emotional campaign tone the series is known for, but the presentation is being pushed with real-time first-person story scenes that keep you inside the cockpit perspective even when the game shifts into narrative beats. That matters because Ace combat stories always lean on mood, and this time the storytelling tools are being treated as part of the experience with more cinematic weight across missions. Public comments from the devs already make the direction clear. Clouds, smoke trails, and layered atmosphere are designed to be readable at speed and affect how you track targets and manage visibility. And the jump to a massive map scale opens room for longer engagements where the front line can shift as the battle develops. Halloween is turning the 1978 slasher into a playable sandbox, with a full single-player story running alongside online multiplayer. The setup stays very Haddonfield. One side plays Michael Myers. The other plays local heroes who have to keep people alive long enough to get them out. Earlier in development, rights issues caused a major shift. Boss Team Games, the studio behind Evil Dead, lost the project after a silent internal fallout. Now the original Friday the 13th, the game duo Ilphonic and Gun Media have reunited to take the reins. A big twist is the NPC layer. Townsfolk are on the map too, so heroes spend time warning them, escorting them, and pulling weapons and supplies together while the town slowly collapses into panic. Michael's toolkit is built around control and fear instead of boss fights. The devs talk about shape jump as a way for him to suddenly appear across the map, and the whole loop is designed around stalking, splitting groups, and punishing noise. Heroes can fight back, but the point is delay and disruption. Enough police presence can knock Michael down and hold him briefly, buying time for an escape push. The official date on the calendar is September 8, 2026 for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Tides of Annihilation sells its hook through the setting first. A modern London shattered by an otherworldly tide, with Arthurian mythology bleeding straight into the streets. The combat pitch is built around a single lead who fights alongside spectral knights, treating them like real combat partners. Call-ins, synchronized attacks, and timing-based pressure that makes the fights look choreographed without turning them into cutscenes. The standout promise is scale and pace. This is not framed as a slow grind, it is framed as a stylish action game where parries, aggressive strings, and quick positioning matter, and where boss encounters lean into myth-sized presence. Public showings put a lot of attention on how cleanly the animation reads in motion and how tightly the camera stays on the action, even when the battlefield gets busy. Tencent currently owns 90% of the rights to the IP, which provided the massive budget needed for its dimensional combat mechanics, where bosses like the Witch Tyranno can fold the game world into parallel mirror realms. Despite the Souls-like visual aesthetic, internal playtests describe it as a pure action-adventure title, more akin to Devil May Cry or Bayonetta in terms of speed and combo-heavy gameplay. Right now there is no exact date, but the devs themselves said their goal is to ship the game in 2026, and based on the footage we have already seen, it is looking solid. Styx is back for another heist, and this time Cyanide is leaning into what the series does best. Stealth, dirty tricks, and that greedy goblin energy where every mission feels like a robbery that went sideways. The hook is quartz, a new insanely valuable resource that has everyone in the world losing their minds, and Styx shows up to steal it, while humans, elves, and orcs tear each other apart over control. Instead of one straight corridor campaign, the game is built around 3 big open environments with vertical routes and tool-based progression, a glider for aerial movement, a grapple to snap to hard-to-reach spots, and claw climbing to scale structures fast. On the ability side, Blades of Greed mixes amber powers like invisibility and cloning with quartz tricks like mind control and time shift style manipulation, so plans can pivot mid-run when a patrol breaks. Add crafting for gear and potions, and you get a sequel that doubles down on improvisation, where the cleanest run is usually the one that adapts the quickest. The release date is set for February 19, 2026 on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, after the game was pushed back from its earlier 2025 window. Directive 8020 pushes the dark pictures into full sci-fi paranoia, with a crew on a deep space mission discovering an organism that can copy humans and slide into the team unnoticed. The tension is built around trust breaking down in real time, who is still themselves, who is compromised, and how fast a bad decision can turn a contained situation into a ship-wide crisis. A key mechanical shift is that the threat is no longer wait for the next scene. Supermassive has been talking about more active danger, timing, and moments where a single mistake escalates instantly. Stealth is now a tactical necessity, as the alien stalkers can emerge from vents and react to the beam of your shoulder-mounted flashlight. They also keep leaning on their branching structure, with turning point-style tracking that highlights where the story split and what choices triggered the damage, so the game is designed to be replayed with a clear map of consequences. The project has faced delays, originally targeting 2025 but now locked for the first half of 2026 to ensure the ray tracing and metahuman facial animations meet the high fidelity required for this new sci-fi direction. Code Vein 2 keeps the series' signature mix of fast melee, partner-driven combat, and blood systems, then adds a bigger narrative swing by tying the story to time manipulation. The official framing talks about jumping between eras to change outcomes for revenants and the world around them, which is a clean excuse to remix locations, enemies, and boss encounters without losing the identity of the first game. The buddy structure stays central, with the game still built around fighting as a duo, coordinated pressure, saves, and combo flow that makes encounters feel more tactical than a simple dodge and swing loop. On the customization side, the series' build obsession is clearly intact. Weapon styles, blood-based abilities, and loadout tuning that lets the same fight play out very differently depending on how the character is configured. Bandai Namco has set January 30th, 2026 for the return of its anime Souls-like. There's also a character creator demo dropping on January 23, and your created character can carry over into the full game, so you've got a full week to perfect your Revenant's look before the blood drinking starts. Game Freak is finally moving out of the Pokémon shadow with Beast of Reincarnation, their first AAA mature action RPG. Originally teased as Project Bloom, the game is set in 4026, in a post-apocalyptic Japan consumed by a corrupting blight. You play as Emma the Sealer, an outcast who uses blight powers to manipulate nature, accompanied by her loyal dog. The combat is a massive departure for the studio, trading turn-based menus for precise technical swordplay that insiders compare to Sekiro and Black Myth Wukong. The public pitch frames it as an action-adventure with a strong sense of journey, with the world itself acting like an opponent through hostile wildlife, unstable terrain, and constant pressure to keep moving. Showing so far highlight fast, grounded melee where spacing and stamina-like management matter, with big beast encounters that feel like apex threats instead of routine mobs. The tone is deliberately serious, and the visuals focus on ruined infrastructure being swallowed by vegetation, creating that end-of-the-world Japan mood that reads immediately even in short clips. The game is scheduled for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, with a confirmed Day 1 launch on Xbox Game Pass. The Coalition is stripping the franchise back to its horror roots with Gears of War E-Day. Set 14 years before the original game, this prequel follows a young Marcus Fenix and Dominic Santiago during the initial Locust emergence. The studio is prioritizing a darker, grittier tone where the Locust aren't just cannon fodder but living nightmares. They've completely redesigned the standard drone to be physically intimidating and brutal, aiming to capture the Alien versus Aliens transition in reverse, returning to the tension of the first entry. Technically, E-Day is being used as the benchmark for Unreal Engine 5 on Xbox. The Coalition claims the game features over 100 times more environment and character detail than Gears 5, largely thanks to rebuilt assets using nanite and hardware-accelerated ray tracing for lighting, reflections, and shadows. Even the Mad World track in the trailer was masterfully reimagined to fit this more emotive, character-led story. Fans can also look forward to the origin story of the Chainsaw Lancer, seeing how the COG soldiers adapted mid-invasion. While a 2025 release was rumored, the project is now officially targeting 2026 to ensure the next-generation destruction and gore animations are fully polished. Mortal Shell 2 is a massive step up for Cold Symmetry, representing the biggest investment publisher Playstack has ever made. Building on the success of the 2020 original, this standalone sequel moves from a tight indie scope to a densely packed open world. The core body possession mechanic returns, but with a twist. You play as the Harbinger, traversing through more than 60 dungeons and leveraging the shells of fallen warriors to gain entirely new skill sets. The combat is described as faster and more intense than its predecessor, incorporating wild new ranged options like machine gun crossbows and shotgun-style firearms. The dark fantasy setting is even more grotesque, with the reveal trailer showcasing over-the-top enemies like a giant armored snail. The 30-person team is focusing on unrestricted exploration, where your choices in which shells to inhabit dictate the narrative path. Beta signups are already live on their official website, as the studio wants to fine-tune the hardened mechanic, the ability to turn your skin to stone, to balance the increased enemy speed. This sequel aims to prove that the small studio punching above its weight class identity hasn't been lost, despite the significantly larger scale. Frogwares is undergoing a total genre shift with The Sinking City 2. While the first game was a detective adventure with horror elements, the sequel is a full-blown survival horror experience built on Unreal Engine 5. Set in the 1920s city of Arkham, an iconic Lovecraftian location, it features a standalone story separate from Charles Reed's journey. The biggest change is the focus on combat and exploration, with the investigative work now being entirely optional. The development story is one of extreme resilience. Based in Ukraine, Frogwares had to put pre-production on hold in early 2022. They are now working under constant drone and missile attacks, dealing with frequent power outages that have inevitably pushed the release to the first half of 2026. Despite these conditions, the Kickstarter for the game raised 4 times its goal in days. Technically, the flood mechanics are more dynamic. Rising waters will physically alter locations as you progress, revealing new monsters like the deep ones. For those who enjoy the detective side, investigating clues will still yield better gear and lore, but it's no longer a requirement to finish the nightmare. Subnautica 2 is shaping up as a real new chapter instead of a safe repeat, and the biggest headline is co-op support baked in from the start, with up to 4 players exploring together while still keeping a full solo option. The official messaging frames it as a new world with new ecosystems, so it's not a return trip to familiar biomes, it's a fresh planet with its own rules, predators, and progression surprises. The structure still revolves around the series' strongest loop: scanning, crafting, and gradually building a base that turns panic into control, and then turning control back into fear the moment you dive deeper than your equipment can handle. The difference is that shared exploration changes the rhythm, because roles emerge naturally. Building, scouting, resource runs, and someone has to keep the lights on logistics. Release is planned as an early access launch in 2026 on PC and Xbox Series, with Xbox positioning it inside the game preview pipeline and day one availability through Game Pass when it hits that stage. Fate Trigger is Tencent's massive push into the anime-styled tactical shooter market. Developed by Saros Studios, it's a hero-based battle royale powered by UE5, featuring a dynamic world of floating islands. The game made waves during its closed beta, attracting hundreds of thousands of players with its high-fidelity character designs and scientifically sound weapon handling. The devs explicitly stated they experimented for months to ensure characters could move realistically while maintaining a stylized anime look. Technical focus for the PS5 version includes full support for adaptive triggers, haptic feedback, and gyro aiming, built to bridge the gap between console and PC competitive play. Game design goes with a shorter-than-average time to kill, but it makes up for it with 8 vs 8 team deathmatch modes for practice. A new map, Blightfront, introduces 13 urban zones designed for intense close-quarters combat. Saroasis is already positioning the title as an esports contender, testing professional tournaments during the beta phases. Account progress will carry over between PlayStation and PC when early access launches in first quarter 2026. Team Kill Media, the studio behind Quantum Error, is back with Code Violet, a dinosaur survival horror that wears its Dino Crisis inspiration on its sleeve. You play as Violet Sinclair, navigating a research facility infested with velociraptors and a massive T-Rex. The standout feature is a psychological fear system, where Violet's mental state actively distorts the environment and player perception of threats. The story jumps to the 25th century colony Aeon on TRAPPIST-1E, where humanity fights sterility by literally pulling women from the past. That time travel setup is baked into the game's official premise. Also worth reminding PC players that they won't be able to play Code Violet, at least at launch. The devs openly said they're skipping a PC release to prevent vulgar mods of the characters, which comes off as especially weird when you look at some of the outfits included in the deluxe edition. We already covered how much backlash and debate that sparked in earlier videos, so no need to go back into it. For PS5 owners though, this one lands as the platform's first console exclusive of the year. Tarsier Studios, the brilliant team behind the first 2 Little Nightmares, has officially crossed the finish line with Reanimal. The developers confirmed that the final master version of the game was completed as of December 2025, which effectively locks in its February 13, 2026 release date without any risk of further delays. This spiritual successor is a cooperative horror adventure following a brother and sister through a literal animal hell to save their missing friends. Unlike their previous atmospheric puzzles, Reanimal places a heavy emphasis on seamless co-op, both local and online, with a campaign estimated to last over 10 hours, significantly meatier than their past titles. The transition to Unreal Engine 5 has allowed for a more visceral camera system and grotesque, larger-than-life creature designs that populate the island. A rare fact for Nintendo fans, while the game arrives on PC and current consoles in February, a version for the upcoming NS2 is already confirmed, with a dedicated demo planned for that specific hardware. The current demo on existing platforms has already received high praise for its oppressive atmosphere, proving that Tarsier still knows exactly how to tell a disturbing story without saying a word. And I can't not include one more game on this list. It's something I played back when I was a kid. Carmageddon Rogue Shift is 34 big things taking the series' car combat chaos and rebuilding it around a run-based campaign set on Earth in 2050, where wars, disasters, and a corporate food supplement helped trigger the mutation outbreak that turned most people into the Wasted. So these deadly races become the last shot at reaching a spaceport beyond the mountains. Your car is treated like the main character, with 15 unlockable vehicles that all feel different thanks to their drivetrains, weight, suspension, and steering response, and the build system goes hard with 13 weapon classes and 80+ perks that can stack into ridiculous synergies, like turning a single boost canister into a shredding death roll, multiplying missiles off one shot, or converting nearby explosion damage into repairs. The loop is designed around constant pressure because opponents are meant to drive like they are racing for salvation, and some of them show up in colossal war rigs that play like boss fights. Each run reshuffles the layout and rewards, and even when you wipe, B-coins let you unlock permanent bonuses so the next attempt starts a little stronger and a little smarter. For a franchise that got infamous in the 90s for its gleefully tasteless tone and censorship drama, Rogue Shift keeps that same dark edge, just filtered through zombies, corporate rot, and pure metal-on-metal violence. Release is listed as February 6, with PS5, Xbox Series, and PC confirmed, and Switch 2 also named in a 2026 platform lineup. Also on the 2026 radar, there are 2 more releases from Kakao Games, Chrono Odyssey and Arca-Age Chronicles, but I didn't include them in this list because we still don't have any real concrete release details, aside from their financial reports, which only point to a second half 2026 launch window for both projects. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What are you most hyped for this year, and which of these games looks like the one that's actually worth opening your wallet for?